Before we get into today's show, talking all things Pacers, Summer League, LeBron James, just have to say, shout out to the one and only Jordan Walker, St. Louis Cardinal, for winning the home run derby, taking down Kyle Schwarber in the championship, hit 3 home runs to stay alive, and then beat the hometown Philadelphia Phillies. So, as a big-time St. Louis Cardinal fan, that was a lot of fun to watch. And all right, I'll get the baseball stuff out of the way. Let's talk Pacers.
This is Tyrese Haliburton, and you're listening to Setting the Pace.
Hey, what's up, Pacer Nation? Welcome back to another episode here of your go-to Pacers podcast, Setting the Pace. I'm your host, Alex Gould, and on today's show, I'm going to be going solo to talk about 2 really fun, exciting things. And number one, we're going to get right into the first segment here. We're going to talk about LeBron James. It's going to be a fascinating conversation. I want you guys to put on your imagination caps and just think about all these hypotheticals with me. That probably won't happen, but it'll still be fun to discuss and kind of navigate our way through. And then in the second segment, we're going to talk about the Pacers' 1-point loss, 94-93 to the Toronto Raptors in Summer League action. This was game number 3. Pacers are now 1-2 in Summer League action, but got to give them a lot of credit for how they've fought the last 2 games despite the losses. So first and foremost, let's talk about LeBron James. Ladies and gentlemen, oh man, I know there's a lot of people probably tired of hearing about LeBron James and what's next for the 23-year veteran in his career, but it's still the most fascinating storyline out there. People love to hear about what LeBron James is going to do next, and there's so many teams involved that think they actually have a chance at him. Philadelphia is hoping they can get him at their starting 4. Same for Minnesota. The Cavaliers are praying for a reunion and a comeback for the 3rd time. The Miami Heat fans and Giannis Antetokounmpo are begging for him to come there. Then the Golden State Warriors, they've pretty much done nothing all offseason, and their hope is like, oh, please, LeBron, come play with Steph. He's a really good friend of yours. Hey, come play with Draymond, right? Like, let's have the old heads join together and see if they can do something in the Western Conference. But you know what's really interesting to me is everybody has ruled out the Pacers from day one. Nobody's talking about the Pacers. And look, the Indiana Pacers have a compelling case to why LeBron should join them, and I'm going to tell you about that. But before we get into that, this week, LeBron James is set to appear at the Fanatics Fest in New York City to have a live episode of Mind the Game, and with Steve Nash unable to attend this event, he has asked Indiana Pacers superstar point guard Tyrese Haliburton to be his special guest co-host. And I just love the storyline of here's LeBron James. He's in New York City. Tyrese Haliburton is public enemy number 1 in New York City for what he's done the last 2 playoffs against the Knicks. And now, obviously, the Knicks won the championship this past season, but the 2 years prior, Tyrese Haliburton was the thorn on the Knicks' side that they just could not get over Indiana, and Tyrese Haliburton is the face of the franchise. So I just think it's really interesting. Now, look, this is not the first time Haliburton has joined LeBron on a podcast. This will be, I believe, the second time he joins him. He was on a 2-part episode earlier in the season, talking about his Achilles recovery, talking about where the game's at now, their 2024 Olympics run together. And there's just a mad respect from Haliburton for LeBron. That was one of his favorite players growing up. And then for LeBron, for Haliburton, I think he loves the way that he thinks about the game and plays the game. And, he's been tweeting about him during the playoffs. And, even against the Cavaliers, he was like, Hallie F and hooping, and everybody remembers that. Like, it was really cool to see LeBron James kind of back up a young point guard in Haliburton that is clearly one of the best true point guards in today's NBA. So this is where I got my thinking cap on because, I'm very, in depth. I'm in the weeds way too much probably on where the Pacers are at from a financial standpoint, okay? And everybody's trying to figure out what the first apron is, what the second apron is, and what the luxury tax is. Like, I still see people tweeting at me and saying, I wish the Pacers would pay the tax. Well, they're currently a tax-paying team right now. They're like $5.8 million into the tax. And so when I hear people say that, I just think it's all confusing. They have hard capped themselves at what is the first apron, and they have roughly $2.24 million that they can spend before getting to that first apron. Now, unfortunately, for a player like LeBron James, who has reportedly said he would sign for a veteran's minimum to go play for a championship contender, which the Pacers believe that they are, they would still need $2.45 million of available cap space to offer that to LeBron to get him on the roster. Now, Indiana could simply cut Quentin Jackson's contract. Only so much is guaranteed, but that would give them enough space to be able to absorb a veteran's minimum contract for LeBron James, the exact same contract that they gave Larry Nance Jr. It's kind of weird to say that, but that is what it would be. And that is really the only way the Pacers can make this work financially to bring LeBron in, is if he's willing to take that veteran's minimum. Now, at the end of the day, LeBron's made a ton of money in his career, so he doesn't really need the money, but money does talk. I think cities talk. There's a lot of other options out there that could make the case that could be more interesting from a living standpoint, but from a championship level basketball team standpoint, a lot of teams are unproven with what they've put together. Like you look at Minnesota, they got LaMelo and Anthony Edwards together. You look at the 76ers, they just put Jaylen Brown on their team. Joel Embiid can't stay healthy. How does that work all together? Miami, they're like a fresh new team where they basically stripped their team down to the studs to make sure they got Giannis, which rightfully so, it's a great player, but they've got a lot of question marks. And then you look at a team like the Cleveland Cavaliers. They have been underwhelming year after year after year, and I don't think a LeBron James being added to their team is going to just automatically just turn Donovan Mitchell and James Harden into these great playoff performers that they've, been very inconsistent with throughout their career. They just really haven't been able to win those big games and win those big series when it matters the most. And then if you look out in the Western Conference, the Denver Nuggets, I think they're a pretty fascinating team. They pretty much have their same core together, but they're really up against it from a cap standpoint. So who knows how they would be able to get the money to get LeBron James. And then you look at the Golden State Warriors, and that would be a fun storyline with LeBron and Steph and Draymond coming back. And, can we get the band back together for like what used to be like the 2016 era of, the NBA? But unfortunately, I just think that team is going to end up being too old and not be able to really compete at the highest level. So for the Pacers, they do have ways to get themselves in a financial spot where they can get LeBron James, but not just LeBron James. They can also get Bronny James. And so that has been one of the biggest beliefs across the NBA, talking points is wherever LeBron goes, he's probably going to want Bronny to come play with him. And so, I don't think the Lakers are going to be holding out too much to be like, hey, we need all these picks for Bronny James because, it was a very strategic thing for LeBron to announce he's going to leave the Lakers once Bronny's contract became guaranteed. Because I don't know if LeBron says he's not going to come back to the Lakers, Bronny could have been a free agent. So I think make sure your own get paid and then make your decision. So, Bronny James, I don't know if he's an NBA player or not, but I think he's decent enough to be at the end of a roster. Probably not an everyday rotation guy, but he wouldn't be that if he were an Indiana Pacer. So from a financial standpoint, the Pacers are $2.24 million away from being a first, into the first apron. They need to have enough money to sign LeBron James at 2.45. So they couldn't do that with what they currently have right now. But Bronny James being traded to the Pacers is a possibility, and it would actually help the Pacers create enough space to sign LeBron James to that veteran minimum. So here's how it would work. Very simple trade. I'm not even including picks. I don't know what the Lakers would want. I don't know if the Pacers would do it, but you trade Quentin Jackson straight up for Bronny James, and it saves the Pacers about $300,000, okay? This would get the Pacers at roughly $2.52 million below the first apron. 2.45 is what they need to sign LeBron James to that veteran's minimum, which gets you around $70,000 below the apron. Now, you're really, really, really close, but it gets you to 15 spots on the roster filled. It gets you LeBron James and Bronny James, and you're still below the first apron. You can do it legally and financially. It works. So that to me is just, could the Pacers really pull this off? It's a long shot. Like I said earlier, it's a long shot. I don't want you guys to get your hopes up, but if you put your imagination caps on, that is how it could work. Quentin Jackson, I think we all like him as a player, but if you can trade Quentin Jackson and it gets you both LeBron and Bronny, if you're a Pacer fan and you're wanting to get somebody that can really change things, then that's LeBron James. LeBron James is going to add attention. He's going to add drama. He's going to add pressure. But I think at the end of the day, if you're looking from a basketball, if you're looking at it from strategically basketball only, it does make sense. And look, LeBron is probably more of a 4 than he is a 3 right now, but playing with Siakam, Zubats, Nembhard, and Haliburton in the starting 5, you put Nesmith on the bench, with Kelly Oubre, TJ McConnell, Obi Toppin, and then Jay Huff, Jarris Walker, Ben Shepherd, like Johnny Furphy, like that's a ton of depth. That is truly what I think people would say is a contingency plan compared to what they've done already. Now, with what they've done already, like I still think the Pacers are in a great spot and could still win the Eastern Conference without LeBron James, even if LeBron were to join one of those other teams. But I just think it strengthens their case to have more versatility, have more options. And look, we know LeBron can still play the point. Like he loves to have the ball in his hands. So yeah, it would add some, different wrinkles to how they want to play a little bit at times. But at the end of the day, like if you can get a talent as good as LeBron on a minimum contract and he wants to come to Indiana, the Pacers would be silly to say, no, we're not going to do that. I just don't see a world where they would actually say no. And you have to believe that Haliburton is pitching LeBron, hey, we got a roster spot open. Come on, play with the Pacers. Let's make this work. I think everybody knows that it's probably going to be 7 or 8 other teams ahead of the Pacers in terms of the pecking order. But if you're looking at it from a strategic point of just basketball only, I think Indiana has a great case. It's very compelling to me. And I could sit here and list tons of reasons why I think Indiana just fits better for LeBron, because the main thing for me is like they've already got an established group of guys, right? All these other teams have so many new faces and they're trying to figure things out. But if you can come to an established culture with a veteran head coach that knows how to coach championship level teams, then let's be honest, Rick Carlisle with the Dallas Mavericks beat LeBron James and has immense respect for him. Like, you don't think LeBron would want to play for a veteran coach like Rick Carlisle? Like, I think that would be more up LeBron's alley than playing for a coach that's kind of new and doesn't really get it all the way. I just think there's so much stability with what the Pacers have put together here that it would be easy to kind of absorb LeBron. I think some people that are worried about, LeBron would ruffle too many feathers and he would change things and it would be like almost similar to how Andrew Bynum, when he was brought in, would change things. I disagree with that. I think LeBron is just too smart of a basketball player, too smart of a basketball mind to come in here and disrupt that much. I think he would actually help the Pacers get better and work on their areas that they have weaknesses at. And with his ability to run point guard, like you don't have to play Haliburton as many minutes probably throughout the regular season. You can rest him on back-to-backs. You can rest LeBron on back-to-backs. There's so much depth. Just honestly, so much opportunity for guys to not have to overexert themselves throughout the regular season. Then when you get into the playoffs, you have so many options you can throw out at other teams. Like it's just a really fascinating thing to think about. And so that's all I wanted to say. I know that I'm probably getting way too down a rabbit hole, way too far down a rabbit hole here. That's not going to happen. But overall, I think Pacer fans should feel pretty encouraged that Tyrese Haliburton's even getting this opportunity and this platform to be with LeBron James when he could potentially make this announcement. And I think it'll be interesting to hear what Tyrese has to say about it if he doesn't join the Pacers. I know a lot of Knicks fans were hoping, it's in New York City. Could he go to the Knicks? That would just be crazy to hear LeBron tell Haliburton in New York, hey, I'm joining the Knicks. They just won the championship. Let's ride those coattails. That would be fascinating. But I think from a storyline perspective, like to announce that you're joining the Pacers in New York City, like you can't get much better than that. Come on now. I love all this stuff. I think it's fascinating. So anyway, let's go ahead and take a quick commercial break. We'll come back and dive into the Pacers Summer League Game 2 loss to the Toronto Raptors. We'll talk about that right after this. Boy, oh boy, that was a interesting start for the Indiana Pacers in their third Summer League game. They get themselves down into a very bad hole, go 1 of 19 to start the game. They made a starting lineup change from what they had previously been, putting out there. Ranked Mast off the bench. Tamin Lipsey didn't even play in this game, and they go with a different group, and it just did not pan out, and they didn't play well. They were down 24-6 with about 8 minutes left, or 8 minutes into the first quarter. So just a little over 4 minutes to play, they finally were able to kind of get some offense going and cut the lead to 10. And then by the half, they were all knotted up. And so it was cool to see them kind of go on that 39-19 run to end the half after being down 24-6. But it was one of those things where it was just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And as you're evaluating this team, you kind of want to see certain players play well. And right now, we're kind of evaluating all the guys on the two-way deals really closely. And so maybe it's a little bit unfair, but Jalen Slauson just continues to be the best player on the Summer Pacers team. He really was great tonight. Maybe didn't have the best overall game. Maybe Ranked Mass did once again, but he still had he still had 21 points in this game, and I believe he came up with 8 rebounds as well. So a really good game from him. Rank Mast had 23 points and 10 rebounds off the bench. Like I mentioned at the head of the podcast, he had a chance to get the game winner. And, the shot was right there at the rim, but, he didn't have much of a choice. He had to get rid of it quick. There was hardly any time left on the clock. And Seth Lundy volleyballed that thing. I mean, I was like, holy cow. Like, he got up and, Rank Mass does not have the greatest vertical, but man, does he know how to use his body and get himself in a good spots to get the hook shot up and just get to the basket. So really solid game from him. And honestly, Gabe McLaughlin, I really like the way Gabe played today. He had 16 points on 3 of 4 shooting, went 2 of 2 from the from 3-point land. So he is just a player that when he's hot, like he's got a pretty shot, but sometimes he gets a little trigger happy and you're just like, hey, Gabe, slow down. But tonight, this was a great game from him. Didn't overshoot it, took advantage of stuff, got to the free throw line a couple of times and took advantage of that. But he also had 6 rebounds in this game. And really, it was that group of guys that they led and carried the team. They had 60 of the 93 points. So nearly 66% of the points for the Pacers came from that group. And then Talon Peter, didn't shoot a ton and still has not been the most exciting player to watch, but he went 4 of 7 from the field, which is a good percentage. He had 10 points. Just he's kind of a role player that is sticking to that in summer league. He's not trying to pretend that he's somebody he's not, and I respect that. But at the same time, in summer league as a second-year guy, like you want to maybe see him do a little bit more, and we've seen flashes of like some good passing with some connections to Jalen Sloss and things like that, but at the end of the day, like you want to see Talon Peter take another step as an offensive player. And I just don't really think it's there. But we'll see what the Pacers do with him moving forward because I just don't know if they're going to be able to bring him back on a two-way deal with Kobe Brown and Jalen Slauson really, really competing hard for those minutes or those spots. And then the player that I think is going to get the other spot is Braden Smith. Now, I was pretty defensive, I guess you could say is the right word, of Braden Smith after the first 2 games. The first game I thought he struggled, but he still had some like nice play with 8 rebounds and 4 assists. Like was still impacting the game in ways that felt like, okay, yeah, he didn't have a great shooting night. I think he went like 1 of 8 in game 1. But boy, oh boy, this was a terrible matchup for him with Toronto. He really showed his lack of burst, separation, size. And I hate to say that because 0 for 7 is just not acceptable from your starting point guard. And he did hand out 9 assists, and we know he's a great passer. But my oh my, 0 for 7. Like you cannot have shooting nights like that as a point guard. And he's not really taking advantage of the opportunities when he gets them to score. Struggling to get separation to create extra shots for him or extra space for himself on shots. Like, and then when he has had it, he's shanking layups and things like that. So I just, I understand why people are like, this guy's too small. Like he needs to be better overall. And if the Pacers really expect him to be something, like he's got to prove more. And like when you're struggling in summer league, like what does that mean for the G League and what does that mean for the NBA? Like, are you going to be able to get to that level? I think it's way too early to write somebody off yet after just 3 games of summer league play. And you're going from college and the Purdue system with Matt Painter to here's a new Pacers offense that's pretty different than what you're used to running. And here's a bunch of guys you've never played with before and go figure it out. Like, I get it. Like, it's hoops. It shouldn't be that difficult. But at the end of the day, Braden Smith is a very smart basketball player, and he still looks like he's under control, I would say, as like an orchestrator of the offense. Just as a scorer with the offense, like he's been really, really pretty bad outside of 1 quarter against Philadelphia. So I would say through 12 quarters, we've seen 1 great quarter, 4th quarter against Philly, and then probably 2 other solid quarters, and then the other 9 have been pretty underwhelming. And so that's just not like screaming like, oh, this is a great ringing endorsement of a guy that they just drafted 38th overall. But when you draft somebody that high or you trade for somebody that's drafted that high at 38, you're at least going to give them 1 year. Like you're not going to sit there and be like, we're going to cut him after the summer league play because he didn't look great in summer league. Like that would be a big swing right there for the Pacers to admit they're wrong already after just a couple of games from summer league. So they didn't put all this work in terms of what they were doing from a scouting perspective to just give up on him that easily. But for the fans that didn't believe in Braden Smith early on and have basically said this was just a trying to save face selection because of how upset fans were about the pick being, traded to the Clippers. Their case is getting stronger every time Braden Smith struggles, but I don't buy that. I think at the end of the day, Braden Smith is still impacting the games, even if he's not having a great offensive production from a scoring standpoint. But still, you can't knock 9 assists and act like it's nothing. Sure, they're asking him to play this faster pace than he's used to playing. They're asking him to get rid of the ball quicker. They're not saying, hey, go run the offense like you did at Purdue. No, they're not asking him to do that. So if you're expecting that and expecting big points out of him every single game, that's just not really who he is. He didn't even score that much in college. He was a good scorer, but he wasn't a great scorer. He's never been an elite scorer. So I just think that at the end of the day, Braden Smith, give him a little bit more time. Let's see what he does against Minnesota. It could be just the matchups that he's had against the Cavs and the Raptors were just problematic for him. I mean, we've seen some of the best players in the league, struggle with certain matchups. And it's okay, maybe that's just the case for him and he's still trying to figure things out. I'm not trying to make excuses because I've not been overly impressed. I was impressed with the way that he bounced back against Philadelphia, from the tail end of the third quarter going into the fourth. I was man, this is a player that looks pretty solid. But then the other games, it's doesn't have a great plus minus, has been up and down. Overall, just inconsistency. I feel at times he doesn't really know how to just take over, where I think it'd be better if he just I'm the point guard, let me get this thing set up. At times he's been a little bit passive. He, kind of defers to the veterans on this team, like Jalen Slauson, go do your thing, or even a Rank Mass, let me see if I can get him involved because Rank's a good scorer. No, you need to take control of the basketball a little bit more and be that offensive engine, and maybe he can do that. So that's kind of my takeaways from that. I really don't have anything else. We got to see some Jalen Worley today. Didn't do, too much. We got to see Alex Reese start, and that was an interesting decision. Didn't really stick out either. So I just thought overall, if you watch this game, you had to feel good about the way the Pacers competed, but you probably walked away thinking Rank Mast is more deserving of a two-way spot than some of these other guys maybe are. Yuki Kawamura was not very good in this game. The point guard play just wasn't strong. And when your point guard play is not good, then that is a little bit problematic. So at the end of the day, I think that the Pacers, this is a weird summer league team. They don't, like we talked about last episode, they don't have anybody on a standard contract. So there's nobody that you're just oh, I want to see how they play. It's just a bunch of two-way guys and a bunch of G Leaguers and a bunch of guys trying to create, an opportunity for themselves to sign somewhere else. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I would expect Rank Mass to get a two-way contract somewhere else. I'm sure the other teams that are watching him play are that's pretty impressive, even though defensively there's a lot to be desired. And for Braden Smith defensively, we already knew that he wasn't a great defender. So to act oh, you can't defend at this level, was he a great defender in college? I mean, he was okay, right? He was okay, but it's college. I think everybody knew he was going to be pretty small, and his offense was what people were expecting his bright spot to be, and so far it's not been in summer league. So I don't know. I mean, there's a reason why they agreed to put him on a two-way deal. I think the less pressure and just getting the reps with the G League and the Boom is going to be super important for him and his growth. That's one thing that we talked about last year with Cam Jones. This guy just wasn't ready. Well, part of the reason why he wasn't ready is because he had a back injury and he couldn't play for a lot of the time with the Boom to kind of get those reps. And I think this is where Braden Smith's going to be in a better spot because I think he's going to get actual reps in a lesser competition league. And what he can do there is he can learn and grow from that and then take that into the next level whenever he's asked to play NBA minutes, if he's even asked to play them. So that's kind of my takeaway on Braden Smith. And so that's pretty much all I have for today's episode. So hopefully it was lengthy enough for you. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And put those tinfoil caps back on and start thinking about LeBron in a Pacers uniform, even if it's just a quick second, because once he announces where he's going and it's not the Pacers, there's no chance of that dream happening. But right now, there is still a glimmer of hope for that dream to happen. So you can still imagine it in your mind if you want to. And my friends Brad and Ryan Knight from the Pacers Post Up, they absolutely hate LeBron James. They ran about him on almost every podcast, and they were just please God, do not let him come to the Pacers. And I know there's a lot of fans that probably feel that way, but because they're my friends, I low-key want to see how they respond to LeBron James coming to the Pacers, because Look, as someone that does content and media and things like that, like LeBron James coming to the Pacers for potentially his last season is like a dream come true because there's going to be so much content to fill every single day. And that's aside from just the basketball side of things. So, like, selfishly, like, I would love that. But at the end of the day, I know it's not going to happen, and I'm using this podcast opportunity to kind of like talk myself out of it because like even when I start to like set it all up, I'm like, there could be a chance. Like, so you're telling me there's a chance, like that's how I think we're all kind of viewing it. But Pacer Nation, I appreciate you guys tuning in for this one. Sorry there was no Facci on today's episode. Just trying to give him a little bit of break. We've been recording a lot, and so did this one solo, and then we'll be back tomorrow. We recorded that one on Sunday, so we dive into a lot of what Rick Carlisle had to say in his interview on the sideline, and so thought about releasing that one today, but with all the LeBron stuff and then with this game recap, just wanted to go ahead and touch on that for the next episode, and then after that, Pacers will have their last Summer League game on Wednesday, and so Facci is going to have a guest for that on Thursday, so just plenty of content for you guys to check out. Have not put the latest Fever episode up that Casey and I recorded for Fever Focus. It is on YouTube if you want to check that out, but did not have a chance to put the audio up of that because I was out of town this weekend, so just decided to go ahead and skip it on this feed so it wouldn't be outdated, but Casey and I will be back for some Fever Focus as well this week. So we got plenty of content coming your way here on Setting the Pace, but yeah, I don't have anything else to say, so you know how we end this show, so if you're hoping the Pacers can keep on developing and growing these young players that are competing for two-way spots, competing for G League spots, over the next couple of games here in Summer League. Hit me with those 3 words. Facci, I'll do it for you. Let's go Pacers.